The commitment to build women into the leadership pipeline, that's a long-term commitment. It is not something that happens overnight because of pressure, really good pressure. Women in boardrooms and women in the C-suite have made some advances. Not huge, 12%, 8%. They're not huge, but there have been advances over the last, let's just call it the 5-year time. And in hiring, in companies, there's been immense progress. And even globally right now, it's almost 50-50 in hiring. I don't think anybody disagrees with the fact that having diversity of thought, diversity of representation, and diversity of conversation in boardrooms is a very good thing to have today. You have to have all kinds of perspectives, and women can play a very important role in that.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the World Class Leader Show. And today's guest is Lisa Baird, and it's so pleasure for me to have her on the show because our path crossed, and we will explain, in a minute how our path crossed, but also because he's an amazing leader, and I think it's what we are doing. I think good in this podcast is we're inviting a fair amount of women leaders, and no, I'm not looking at rate us. I'm not making that sort of calculation about how many women leaders needs to be part of the show, but I love talking about men and women equally because that is really the way how we can enrich the conversation. So before getting to introduction, Lisa, just to say thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. It's a real privilege to be here, and it's I know your audience is it's global, and I'm anxious to hear some feedback. So I hope people kind of respond to the podcast, and we can start a dialogue.
Yeah, that's great. So let me tell you more about Lisa. So Lisa is a leader, especially with such a great experience across private and non-private sector. And she has been instrumental in building some of the world's most iconic brands, especially in the sport property side. And look, I think in this show, we're going to talk more about sports, given, the similarities and a connection with business. And diverse marketing and sponsorship expertise span from nonprofit to private sector. She has a demonstrated track record of revenues and profit growth, and currently she serves on the board of Cantaloupe, and that's our connection. That's why and how our path crossed. A leading provider of technology for self-serve commerce, and her previous board service includes Fox Racing, GKL Elite, the International Hall of Fame of Tennis, and the Women's Sport Foundation. Lisa also was announced as as the president and chief executive officer of NextUp in April 2023. And NextUp is the largest nonprofit association providing learning and development programming to advance all women in business. And prior to that was the commission of the National Women's Soccer League, the world leading professional women's soccer league. And then she has been through a number of incredible roles. So she was chief marketing officer at New York Public Radio. She served in a capacity for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee for over a decade. And until 28, she was SVP of Marketing and Consumer Products for the National Football League. And prior to that, she also gained over 20 years of marketing experience in global organizations, including IBM, GM, and Johnson & Johnson. So what a rich profile and experience, Lisa. So first of all, huge congratulations to your career progression.
Thank you very much. I really am. Thank you. I'm very humbled by what you just read. I feel very old.
No, yeah, it's funny, right? Because when someone else reads our profile, sometimes we started to say, "Oh, really? Did I do all of that? Did I make it myself?" So I think it's a good boost and recognition for the work that we have done. So, as said before, Lisa sits on the board of Cantaloupe, and we interviewed, fun enough, just last week. We repurposed the episode. Ravi Venkatesan, who is the CEO um, of Cantaloupe. And Ravi, to me, is one of the most interesting CEOs and leaders I ever interviewed because he has such an angle, such a close relationship with the people, with this idea of consciousness. And look, it was really transformational for me, this conversation I have with him. So I trust his judgment, and we, of course, we are in touch quite often. And when I asked him, Ravi, who else should I interview in your network? The first person he said is, you need to get Lisa on board. And then that's how we started. So Lisa, no pressure.
Well, I'm also a big fan of Ravi. I serve on his board, and he's a rare leader in that he has a very strong emotional intelligence,
Yes.
and really can kind of meet people more than halfway in terms of where they are and where he wants them to go as a leader. But he's also one of the most strategic leaders that I've ever seen. He's so crisp and objective about the future, and he's doing a phenomenal job at Canwa.
Yeah, no, it's great. I do agree. I mean, for the time I spent with him, I can just confirm what you said. So, Lisa, your story spanned, as we said, from many years in corporate, many years working for top brands and organizations, then working primarily in sports properties, and then working, as an advisory board, but also then in a nonprofit. So, what's your take, as a general question about leadership in 2024?
Well, leadership in 2024 is vastly different than it was even just a few years ago. It's
Right.
vastly different. And hindsight being a kind of a very helpful tool, you can look back at kind of a smooth pattern of leadership where leadership was not easy, but certainly the path to leadership
Mm,
was pretty crisp. The path to leadership to be, you would work your way up. You would work your way up in a company. You might start in a big consulting firm and develop that type of skill and capabilities, and then transfer industry leadership. And frankly, in the past, the path to leadership was a little bit more male than female,
mm,
or diverse. Well, if you fast forward to today with, kind of the undercurrents and the headwinds of technology changes, the vast, like the 360-degree view that companies, particularly public companies, have to do today of stakeholders. I mean, in the past, you had a CEO, it was the employees, the customers, and the board. Now the stakeholders are very, very diverse, and it's very tough because you're dealing with political environments and issues and causes that maybe companies were not required to have opinions on before, and they can be quite it can be they can be quite perilous to weigh into. What you also have, though, is the way that work is being done has been fundamentally transformed because of the pandemic. And technology enabled that. So I'm
hmm
not going to say technology enabled it. I'm actually going to come out and say the pandemic was that catalyst that said we're going to work differently. So you have a workforce whose values and way they work is now different. It's demanding different qualities of leadership, and you have kind of a business environment that requires you to be multi-skilled as a leader, really
Yeah.
multi-skilled, and it's not just hard skills anymore.
So let's unpack something that you said. So there are different nuances in some cases, but also some massive changes in leadership due to gender, due to the complexity. That's what I was left with: the complexity of dealing with an environment with maybe multiple stakeholders, and I would add maybe also the complexity driven by higher pressure expectation for leaders to deliver, to execute, because it was in a shorter period of time. But so that's some of the things that I think is critical. So if we look at the women element to start with, um, what's your take? I mean, look, one thing that we all know is for women leaders, talking about women leadership, there is always a risk of start making comparison with the men's world, and it's not necessarily an easy conversation because it might get to to very different ways the conversation. What you think is one thing that you maybe would would suggest or advise to people to consider how they should relate with women as leaders?
It's actually a really great question. We're engaged in doing a study right now with IBM on women leadership globally, and here's the 3 points I'll make. And it was interesting. I was talking about a partner of ours to someone who didn't even know what I did. The first thing is that the commitment to build women into the leadership pipeline in general, That's a long-term commitment. And I think, frankly, people, the ability, and I'm going to make it diversity of all kinds, but I'll talk to women in particular, but it has to be a long-term commitment. It is not something that happens overnight, because what you're seeing right now is because of pressure, really good pressure, women in boardrooms and women in the C-suite have made some advances. Not huge, 12%, 8%. They're not huge, but there have been advances over the last, let's just call it the 5-year time. And in hiring in companies, there's been immense progress. And even globally right now, it's almost 50-50 in the hiring.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Women, when they come in, they start dropping out of the pipeline. And if it happens at that early level, you're not going to ever have enough women to be able to get into the C-suite and get into it. And I don't think anybody disagrees with the fact that having diversity of thought, diversity of representation, and diversity of conversation in boardrooms is a very good thing today. You have to have all kinds of perspectives, and women can play a very important role in that, as can leaders of color and, frankly, people from different nationalities. Right? That's a great word practice. But if women in particular are falling out because of a lot of reasons, you're never going to get to anything other than a little bit of representation, is what I'll call it. The complex thing today is, because of the complexity of the business environment, the most recent studies in 2024, including Spencer Stewart's, have said boards in particular, want people with operational experience. That's because it's so complex to operate. You need really good operators, not just people who might have senior leadership positions in one function, but people who are used to operating at a complexity level. Think about the issues that companies have to deal with today: cybersecurity. Where are we going with AI? How are we handling different laws around the world and even within the United States, and how that affects how we do business? So, in addition, and inflation, just the current business pressures. So, if you don't have women at the beginning of the pipeline going into all kinds of functions and getting that on the ground operational experience right from the start, they're going to be limited. So that's a lot of it. So long-term thinking in terms of building women with the right capabilities. The second thing that I find is striking to me always is, any research will tell you that there still is different expectations of women and men in business. Women are, kind of things like communication skills or the ability to be collaborative are highly valued, and something, well, those are the important things with women. And with men, it could be attributes like, well, they need to be innovative. Well, why is that different? And actually, I'm not disagreeing that you can value different things, but if you look at it, there's still this, I'll call it unconscious bias and there are a lot of really good strides being made by very, very, very companies who are committed to diversity to unpack that kind of systemic bias that you see. And you read about it sometimes. Algorithms have bias because they've been written on data, and the data reflects that bias. So it's kind of an interesting thing to unpack. On the positive side, there are good things about today's work environment that do help women. The ability to work from home as needed, or work with a more flexible schedule. Or I love what I see a lot about child leave policies being mandated to be equal between men and women. A lot mandated to be equal, because taking time off to care for a child after birth can set one's career back, whether they are men or women. So there's some things that are being done, but I'll tell you, we got a long way to go. We have a long way to go to get to that diversity.
Yeah, and to your latest point, I think that wouldn't be possible, unfortunately, or fortunately, thanks to COVID. So COVID has really accelerated the element of
it really
giving
did. It was
women
more of a catalyst on business than I think everybody thought about it as a health scare, and it was. But the long-term impact on things like the very nature of the workforce are going to be they'll be here for decades, probably.
Yeah, and you're right, to the extent that, to be fair, many organizations at the moment, that, to be fair, they started last year at least, They start to call back people to the office. However, they did not, um, you know, did not decide to remove those benefits that have been especially created and given to women during that time. So to be fair, companies now appreciate, they have much more sensitive or sensitivity about
Very
that
much so.
issue than before. So that's, I think it's a
Yeah, I
good
mean,
positive
people's
takeaway
eyes
of
are
that.
wide open to it. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. And then also I've seen leaders appreciate the fact if a woman can't really join for a meeting, she will join remotely, and he's accepted. It's not anymore like, oh, she can make it. So I think on that has really changed men's behavior about that.
And it
Totally.
has, and while they're called, well, we've called them allies, male allies. There's one of the things that I'm kind of most optimistic about is how much more inclusive workplaces are becoming.
Yeah.
So we see even in our own organization and our organizations a growing number of men who want to join our organization, which has been our association, which has been predominantly female. They want to join, they want to be there because they want to learn the skills, the capabilities to be able to network and do business. And I mean, I'm like really optimistic about men going forward. And I'm not going to use the trope or the stuff about my son, but men are they, it's a privilege to hear men now who are genuinely advocating and learning different skills. And without mentorship and sponsorship of men, this is never going to be solved. So I
There's no,
love that I'm
yeah.
seeing such positive dynamics there.
Yeah, it's not going to be possible with that sort of support and endorsement. I would like to go back to the previous point that you made about it's not much. So I was left with it's not less anymore about it's not more it's not really much about representation numbers, quota. It's more about having the right skills or maybe expertise in order to have a specific leadership role in an organization. You mentioned quite rightly the operational experience, because it's
Yes.
something that it didn't occur to me the way how you describe. You said essentially, yes, we need to have more people that have an operational background, especially in board, because most of the challenges the organization are facing right now, they do require some sort of operational expertise or experience, etc. But it sounds like, based on what you said, that is preventing more women from having an active leadership role unless they have the operational experience. But as we know by experience, it's still quite unbalanced relationship between men and women when it comes to operations. If that's one of your observation.
Yeah, we need to be able to foster the type of skills and capabilities early on, and to get women in and give them the operational experience. That's when, think about it, one of the things. And by the way, I want to say something I'm very proud of. I'm on the board of Cantaloupe. We have a board that is 50-50 men, women,
Yeah,
probably a little more weighted towards women. And the women on our board are the head of the audit committee, the head of the audit committee. It's not just, they're, head of we have tremendous regulatory experience on our board because of, one of the women on our board has a long time history of being in compliance and regulation at companies, which is a big challenge for today's companies. So that's, those are hard skills, and what we got to do is get women really still getting comfortable. And I'll give you a great statistic that was just done that we're working on with our company, which is AI is of course it's a topic right now. It's a topic in boardrooms. It's a topic at the dinner table. It's a topic everywhere, and it's still relatively early, even though there's pretty strong adoption. Well, IBM did a study about AI, and they asked the women, why are you adopting generative AI? And then they asked men the same question, and men said, well, it's going to give me a competitive advantage. It's going to make me innovative. And this study by IBM women said, well, I need it so I won't lose my job. Now, that's mentality. But what we need to do is absolutely make it, and I will say this, safe, exciting, inspirational, understandable for women, because this could be, I don't know, and I'm not even pretending to say it, but generative AI should be pretty unbiased. They don't care who it helps or who's using it. And if you think about it, if we can get women to embrace this opportunity and the productivity and understand it, but do it in a way where it's safe, people understand it, they're not tentative about it, they're embracing it for their, for their business career. Wow, this could be of a magnitude of transformation. I am very excited about it. And I don't know that that will manifest. Maybe that, who knows, maybe there's hype here. But people are getting more comfortable using it. And that's one of the things that we want to do at Next Up is provide experiences outside of companies so people can start to learn, they can do it in safe spaces. And that's what we do is leadership building. And part of that is learning at a level to use technology in ways now that have the promise to make you more productive than ever. So that's just one conversation. But teaching people, as I call it, it is incredibly important, and it's actually a real benefit to have women in the C-suite, in senior leadership positions and on boards. But I advise my female friends who are looking for board positions, what's your plus one? That's what I ask them. I said, you're a woman. Yes, that's a big benefit. But what's your plus one? Is it CRM? Is it cybersecurity? Is it an understanding of generative AI that, is just amazing? It's all kinds of things like that. So, I ask people to think and really develop those skills early on and think about their skills really differently. Like there's a huge movement right now, and I'll switch subjects from AI to use weight loss drugs safely and effectively.
Yeah.
But pharmaceutical companies now require new capabilities to have direct relationships with patients. They've never done that before. It's always been through the doctor, correct?
Yes.
But now with the widespread and the way it's doing, well, gosh, if I'm a pharmaceutical company in this industry, I'm looking for people with strong CRM skills. That's what I'm looking for, because you now have a responsibility to manage large patient loads that you've never done before in a highly regulated environment with the cooperation and support of of doctors. So I think I always think I'm an optimist at my heart. I think it's an exciting time for leaders. And I think leaders now can embrace a lot of capabilities that are going to really manifest itself, hopefully in a way that drives the business agenda forward. And I'm also hopeful in a very good, purposeful way.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that was such an interesting conversation that we just had. So, one thing is, you women think about your plus one. So, what could be your differentiation factor? What could be that skill that you need in order to be able to sit confidently, on the top table, whatever is the top table? I love
I
that.
mean, I was hired into my first board. It was a private equity board, and I was like, they didn't want a woman. They were very interested in increasing the diversity of their board with the independent directors. They
Mm.
were doing all the right things that were best practices, but they wanted someone with Olympic merchandising experience. Now that's pretty specific, right? But it was a skill that I had. So it was really like, I was able to think about myself and my skills in really different ways. And that's one of the things I love to help people do. Not just women, by the way, women and allies, people who really want to work in the workforce, the inclusive place of the future. It's a very different way of working, but it's highly satisfying and rewarding.
I can see that, and I can also see how that could be. Now, going back to the women's world, it could be a way for women to really to shine and to
Absolutely.
climb, the notorious corporate ladder. Because that is actually lead me to another question, Lisa. Given your experience, I mean, that could be definitely one area, one way of, you know, scaling up your career, etc. But look, I coach many women, so it's probably more women than men, which I think is just a coincidence.
Yeah, I bet
You
you
want to say
do.
something? Yeah,
Yeah, I bet you
yeah.
do.
So, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, no. There's just a little bit of delay on the signal. Go on, Lisa.
Well, I was going to say, I'm trying to, one of the things that will help leaders of all sorts, and let's just get back to men and women, but women in particular, is active. So there's mentorship and there's sponsorship,
Yes,
right? There's active
yes,
sponsorship.
yes.
So we have a course, we have a company, our member association provides free learning and leadership development, some paid, some free to all of our members. And one of the ways we do it is we do a really concentrated learning experience at 12 o'clock, so people who are eating lunch on their Zoom can get a concentrated thing.
Right.
And one of my original mentors and sponsors, his name is George Fidides. He was one of my bosses early on in my career, hired me in a couple of companies, and he really not only mentored me, but he sponsored me. And he pushed me to develop those different skills and gave me different operational skills really on in my career. He saw the capability, but he knew I had to prove myself. Well, meanwhile, he's now become a very qualified CEO, on the board of some Fortune 50 companies, was the chairman of the board, CEO of a public company throughout his career. And I said to him, let's go do this together. Let's show this relationship, which has been many years, but let's tell women something really specific. They develop a plus one. And the plus one that we're going to teach in the seminar is about looking at business from an investor's point of view. Because everybody, women early on, they're like, okay, financial skills. Okay, I have to have them. I know I have to have them. What do I do? But one of the things is you've got to have financial skills for different reasons, right? If you're running a P&L or a business and you're a general
Yes.
manager, P&L knowledge is really important. But one of the things that anybody can learn, because we're all so consumed with the stock market and things, is why is it important to look at a business from an investment point of view? What do these terms mean and why? And how do you get them early on in your career? Because that can be an enormously important plus one for women, whether you're in marketing or HR, all these incredible functions. So we're going to do that in a webinar. And I think we'll tell the story of here's a sponsorship relationship for many years. He helped me get on my first board. And I think people like you, people like me, people like Ravi, they can reach down and do active things to bring people along with them. And, because there's still a predominance of men, it's really helpful if men really understand not only how important that is, but how rewarding it can be.
Totally agree. I think that's exactly the way how to make it work. What other suggestion, advice would you give, Lisa, to women that are trying to get the right visibility and the right career opportunity in the organization? Because in the in the more virtuous organization, that is already happening. So women have equal opportunities.
Yeah.
There is no discrimination. There is no any sort of bias. So everything is working well. But look, in the reality of the situation is there are still many women, and some of I coach actually, privately or secretly, they share, look, I don't feel I can have a career here for a number of reasons in a male dominated environment. Besides the plus one, and besides what you said in terms of the expertise, the skills, what other advice would you give to women in order to get the right opportunity in organization to be
Yeah.
visible?
Let me switch to a very qualitative and right brain thing. One of the things that I worry the most about so the next generation of leaders, which is really important and to focus on to bring them along, is they have enormous capabilities. They are incredibly efficient workers. When they have a task to do, they're task oriented, they're efficient workers. They can grasp concepts. They're able to think. Those are all hard skills that they're coming in out of college or, out of community college with things. We can go into the college degree importance on another time. And they get in the workplace. The thing that I see the most of that really worries me is the confidence level that I see in people
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
women today. That and
Yes.
it sounds funny because they're coming out of colleges, they're so capable, they're ready to do, but the confidence and I think we have to go back and counsel them. There's a lot of ways to develop that confidence. The first way is, I do believe having regular in person interaction with people is really important. I do. We can't rely entirely on a virtual Zoom or Teams world, even though there are many benefits to it. Don't get me wrong. We've got to have those in-person things, and with people. My daughters are in business, and my son. They all have quote unquote remote working environments with the flexibility work report more. But they all go into work fairly regularly and have those abilities to meet leaders and interact with them. That's special. That's a skill. Don't do that. And it gives you confidence, right? It gives you the confidence you need. The second thing is don't forget that you can develop confidence, that your confidence factor in places outside of work, so that you're more out, you can be confident in work. And that
Mm.
is really kind of a special thing that you do today. You can be a volunteer on something. You can get real management and leadership experience. And maybe it's serving on a nonprofit, but it's really getting those leadership experiences outside of work, because people, I think, are a little scared to do it at work. Work is not that safe space for some people that you spend 30 years at. Um, and being able to express yourself confidently, to take risks confidently, and know that if you make a mistake, there are support systems there for you in work. That's something that I think I'm a little concerned about, and want to see more helpful resources towards that, because I hear that a lot. Particularly with ours, where we can give them an opportunity outside of work to do a leadership, give them a leadership experience outside of work, and I hear, "Oh my gosh, I got confidence from this. I knew that what I was saying it is." A lot of people are fearful of making mistakes, and it's okay. Companies are set up to be organizations that allow for mistakes, but we're developing a new class of leadership that might be a little afraid to trust that company that allows for that. So that's something I'm a little concerned about.
And by the way, I agree 100%. The lack of confidence is primarily the
Yeah,
major mindset or an attitude that stop women from getting, to what they want. It's equally true that, let's face it, some organizations are not really creating the conditions and the right culture for women, for anyone, to be honest, not just women, to speak up openly, to be transparent, to say exactly what they think. So there must be something that needs to be done on a leadership level, because otherwise we are putting as well too much pressure and responsibility on the women to do everything, to do the hard work, but they need to
yeah.
find an environment in order to make sure that that is possible. But likewise, I think you're right on one thing, particularly, I mean, I agree with all in all of what you said is I would recommend women to take responsibility, right? Because the risk is falling into the victimism, into the victim trap and say that is done to me, I can't do anything about, etc. So
That's fine.
to some extent, I think and I really like the point that you made is if it internally is difficult, or you want to actually try to find your own training gym in order to create and build your confidence,
Find
why
your
don't
own
go outside,
leadership
find your own way?
opportunity,
Yeah, I agree. That
and
could be a
do it
board,
outside
but
of
could be
work. At
also
the
other nonprofit, as you said.
It can be, yeah. We are driven. We have volunteer positions across it, and we
Yeah,
give them real responsibility to manage a P&L at a young level, and to do manage a P&L. We give them financial, operational, programming. To give people the confidence that they can get the leadership experiences outside of work that give them the confidence in work, and the network, and the network. The network is so important. So, and it's not network like, let me network so I can find a job. It's network to develop relationships that will
I
serve
agree.
you and allow you to serve others over a lifetime. It's a dual thing. So, networking in
Agreed.
that way, I wish there was a better word that I had for it.
But
Develop,
it's called,
we call it sometimes developing your personal board of advisors. That's really, really important.
yeah, and agreed. I call it a powerful relationship. So, yeah, it's a power base. I call it power base of professional relationships, which
Yeah.
goes way beyond networking. And to this point, I think it's a great message that we can send to the entire audience. Either you are a man or a woman, what I found incredible, um, challenging for many people, also very senior leaders, is they don't really create that. They don't create a relationship outside of work because they have this wrong idea that you need to create a relationship only when you need something, when you need a new job, when you want to move forward, or when you move out, move on in your career. What I always say to my clients is you need to create relationship actually all the time, because that goes way beyond the opportunity itself. But unfortunately, there is still this mentality about I network with people only when I need something, which normally is a job opportunity. But when I'm happy at
Yes.
work, etc., I completely stop my outward looking. I always focus on inward looking, which is, I think, is a shame.
Yeah. And I think, teaching people not to be transactional, but to
Yes,
be
exactly.
relational. And those take a different type of skills, things like emotional intelligence. I mean, one of the favorite courses we have a great VP of learning and development. She's so good at what she does. But it's called, like, in today we call it a tutorial and webinar called navigating polarizing discussions. Who isn't in a polarizing discussion today about any particular topic? But the skills to navigate that well and understand it and really, kind of meet people where they are, understand that you can go into a conversation to learn something and be open to learning something, understanding that you don't have to agree on something, and that's perfectly okay. Those are real skills today in the world that we've created, with this kind of, I don't describe it. The workforce is very different and the workforce challenges, but those kinds of skills are going to develop them. But, that's really.
Agreed. That's brilliant. So, Lisa, you mentioned, between the lines, the work you are doing, but would you like to explain a little bit more to our audience what you are up to right now, besides, your advisory board representation, the work that you're doing there, but, you are leading Next Up. Would you like to tell us a bit more about Next Up?
Yeah, let me just tell you a little bit about it. I'm a year as the CEO. Next Up is a nonprofit member association. So our model is to create memberships. Now, our memberships are subsidized by corporate partnerships. So we have the top S&P 500s as our corporate members, from, Coca-Cola and P&G and Walmart were some of the first
Wow.
companies that helped us found Next Up. We have, Deloitte, Visa, American Express, General Mills, Nestle, Ahold Delhaize, just a tremendous amount of partners. And what we do is we create these memberships, and within the memberships are benefits that are within that really help you learn and grow. There are things that you can attend that are outside the membership that we only offer to our members, like attending our top conferences, our big conferences, 1,700 people a year, and we have 17,000 members. But the thing that really makes us distinctive is we have 21 regions. And remember, I told you about those leadership
Yeah.
experiences? We do provide formal learning. That is really important. But people learn, so the valuable that you get on the job is so important. And back to the job environment today, where it's a little intimidating for new leaders, we create leadership where you serve on a regional board, you have a job, you have a budget to manage, you have revenue goals, you have volunteers to manage. So it's teaching you people experiences. And we have 21 regions around in the US and Canada. And our volunteers get those types of experiences. We teach them how to be a volunteer. We teach them skills. We let them do it, and then they serve for a period of time, and then we open it up to new people. And it's a really great thing. We've been doing
It's a
this for 20
wonderful,
years.
wonderful
It's a
initiative. I
wonderful
love it.
model. And you can become an independent and an individual member, or your corporation can subsidize. We have some corporations that sponsor memberships for over 500 people. It's pretty amazing.
So, how large is the organization then,
Well,
considering
we
all
have
the
over
regions?
100 partners, mostly, yeah, small, medium, and large partners, from, CPG, financial services, technology, oil and gas. We also have 17,000 members. And interestingly,
Wow.
our male membership is growing very fast. The allies are really realizing the value. And we're exploring what we do internationally. There are some companies that really just say, listen, we're okay with an English language training curriculum. It's, an official language, and we'll bring in, and we create opportunities virtually for them to be part of the region. So it's a really, really satisfying job, and I'm really lucky to have it. I'm thankful to my board.
Yeah, that's great. Look, I think it's, first of all, the brands that are behind the, I think, is a testimonial,
Yeah.
of the quality of the work that you're doing and why it's needed.
The
And I
credibility of the
can,
organization is the
yeah,
people
yeah,
that do
totally.
business with you.
Yeah, totally. And I can see the incredible benefit for people to be part of these programs of learning, outside of their work, and then applying what they learn in organizations. So it sounds
Yeah.
amazing. Um, so what is coming next for you? So consider the next few years. Do you have any other projects that you
Well,
will
the
be
job right
working
now
on?
is pretty. We're preparing
It's
for our
already
senior
right.
conference in DC, and I'll tell you, I'm really excited. There's a journalist that I have long admired, and I admire her fearlessness, her intellect, and her fierceness. Her name is Kara Swisher. She's just written a book. And it is at one time a tell all, but also a love story about technology. As a
Okay.
journalist, she's covered kind of the beginning and of Silicon Valley. She's interviewed the top technology people in the world, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg. And some of her interviews are going down in history as some of the most profound interviews of any kind of journalism. She just happens to be that person that at the same time holds them accountable to be a person that they trust. I mean, it's a very unique set of skills. So right now I'm prepping to interview her, to moderate that interview. So that's actually taking a lot of time of mine, as well as getting people to come to the conference, which the conference is June 3rd through 6th in Washington, D.C. And we have an enormous amount of exciting. We have top people from Coca-Cola, number two from Deloitte speaking. So it's going to be really a fun conference.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. So before we end this conversation, Lisa, that was amazing. Is there any last advice that you like to give to people in a leadership role, especially, given your broad experience with leaders? And based on what we said, what is one single piece of advice you would like to give to CEOs or to leaders or to people that are in charge? Okay. So how can I navigate through what's going on right now in the most effective way, in your opinion?
What I like right now, because sometimes right now the future can seem a little foggy for both
Mm,
people personally, but also
yes.
companies. It's a little bit harder to be able to see over the hill right now for, a lot of reasons. I do like to tell people, get your personal board of directors, your personal board of advisors in place. Don't make it transactional. Please don't make it about, I need to find my next job. That is so transparent. And while people who are helpful always do that, don't. Those boards of advisors, what they can do is, sure, they can provide advice about opportunities and things you should do. But my personal board of advisors has changed over the years. It's a board that can help you get opportunities for sure, but it's also a board that can hold you accountable to yourself.
Mm, yes.
And I think that's important. Are you owning things as much as you could? You called it victimized. I call it like, look, embrace being accountable and be accountable for your successes and your mistakes. Don't believe that the world looks like Instagram or LinkedIn, where everything that you post is always, an emoji heart and balloons. Talk about your mistakes, talk about those things, own them. That they're hard to do. It's very hard to do, but do it. But the third thing I like is that your personal board of advisors is invested in you. And sometimes the best advice they'll give you is things that will make you healthier, things that will make you have a little bit more perspective in the moment or long term. And in today's world, that's something that I would really value. My personal board of directors has changed lately. It's funny. It used to be the people that were my leaders and people above me all the time. I had a mentor at IBM that was a big IBM. When I was at IBM, he was a big IBM executive, and it was valuable. Mark Lautenbach. He was a top leader at IBM, and then ended up being the CEO
Mm,
of Pitney Bowes. And I got a lot out of it. But nowadays, my personal board of advisors are younger people, and I'm really learning a lot from this next generation of leadership, and it's really empowering and inspirational to hear what they have to say. So, and some
great.
of my children are on my now personal board of advisors,
Oh,
so it's fun.
wonderful. I think it's such an amazing idea. I think your suggestion should be really taken as something valuable and important. So I do agree. I do agree with your suggestion. So fantastic, Lisa. So where people should go if they want to know more about you or they want to connect?
Please visit our website, which is www.nextupisnow.org. Next, or just Google nextup.org and you'll see us come up. Next Up Leadership. Google, if you if you want to reach out to me personally, LinkedIn me. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm quite active on it. So I'm always available to people who are listening. And sometimes it's just having a conversation with someone that doesn't have an end goal, right? That's what we're here is to help people. It's wonderful to be in a nonprofit. So LinkedIn, visit our website, and I hope to hear from all your listeners. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really privileged you gave it to me.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing your thoughts. And you definitely provided some great, interesting angles for people to reflect, which is the reason why we're doing this show. So we'll
Thank
put,
you.
by the way, the links on your show notes. Lisa, thank you so much again. Have a fantastic rest of the day.
All right. Thank you so much and take care. Bye bye.